Well, today we're going to be reading from Psalm 46, and that is in March 3rd's readings. And there are three things I think I want to point out as we read this today. The first is sort of how to read a psalm like this. And if you notice, there are three places in Psalm 46 where it says interlude. And in some Bibles, it will say Selah. And what that tells you is that there are three sort of thought units in this psalm. And if you can figure out what the main idea of each thought unit is, and then put all three of those together, you can have a pretty good understanding of what the psalmist is trying to say. All right? So let me read each of these. Well, and I should also point out, the second thing we want to do, I think I want to point out how this psalm especially is full of allusions to other scriptures. You almost have to know a great deal of the Bible in order to see what's going on. And then the third thing we'll do is we'll try to make an application for what the guy's saying, all right? So let me read the first three verses and then let's talk about them. God is our refuge and our strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. So we will not fear when earthquakes come and the mountains crumble into the sea. Let the oceans roar and foam. Let the mountains tremble as the waters surge. All right, this is our first unit. And the first thing maybe that I would cue in on is times of trouble. That doesn't say a lot to us, but it can kind of give us a hint of where this psalm is wanting to land. When it says, so we will not fear when earthquakes come and the mountains crumble into the sea, a good reader of the scripture will recognize those references. And actually, you could probably put a couple of references there. Matthew 24 and Luke 21, Revelation 11, all have references to mountains falling, mountains crumbling, islands being removed, and so on. So now we start to wonder, is this psalm really saying something about the last days, when there's going to be all kinds of physical and cosmological upheaval in the world? Let the oceans roar and foam, let the mountains tremble. Well, there's a passage in Luke 21 where it says that people will be afraid at the roaring and tossing of the sea. In the last days, there's going to be such turmoil that the sea is going to go crazy in such a way, and it will cause terror in people. So as I read this, I'm starting to get the sense that, is this really speaking about the end times? The second thought unit. A river brings joy to the city of our God, the sacred home of the Most High. God dwells in that city. It cannot be destroyed. From the very break of day, God will protect it. The nations are in chaos and their kingdoms crumble. God's voice thunders and the earth melts. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. Well, now we get quite a few more references to something that really is pointing to the last days. A river brings joy. Well, that is speaking of the river that comes out of the New Jerusalem in Revelation 20, 21, 22. God dwells in that city. That's the New Jerusalem will be God's home forever once he returns at the end of the age, I should say. So now we've got a reference to Jerusalem. We've got a reference to the river. This is now pointing fairly strongly to the book of Revelation in some ways. But it's also referencing passages in Zechariah and in Joel 3 and in other scriptures that have also said something about this kind of thing. The nations are in chaos, so the nations are going to be in turmoil. Kingdoms are crumbling. Well, Jesus talks about that in Matthew 24, the Olivet Discourse, where he's talking about the last days. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. Now we've got an army from heaven among the Israelites, among the people of God. So that speaks of Revelation 19. What is my point here? My point is, as we read the scriptures and we get familiar with the scriptures, we can understand more of the scriptures because we have a greater fund of references and symbols and allusions that we can draw upon as we read the scriptures. All right, let's go to the last thought unit and then we'll put it together. See how he brings destruction upon the world. Okay, now that's definitely talking about the last days. He causes wars to end throughout the earth. Jesus will come back to end all wars. He breaks the bow and snaps the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be honored of every nation. I will be honored throughout the earth, throughout the world. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. Okay, so now it's pretty clear that this is a psalm that has prophetic overtones, that's looking toward the last days, when the Lord returns, when the armies of heaven come. To know that, you have to know quite a bit about other parts of the Bible. All right, the three thought units. If you go to the first one, God is our refuge and strength, ready to help us, that seems to be a section that affirms trust in God no matter what's happening in our world. And the second section, a river brings joy, the sacred home, God dwells in the city, seems to be exalting the New Jerusalem, the city where God will dwell, himself will dwell. And Zechariah talks a lot about that as well. So we've got our trust is in God, the security of the city of Jerusalem is the second one, and then the third, how he brings destruction, he causes wars to end throughout the world, and so on. Be still and know that I am God. That's really affirming God's victory over his enemies. No matter what happens, no matter what happens to the mountains, the earthquakes, God is going to bring victory in the end. So that's one way to read that. A couple of things to say in terms of application. And this is pretty general, but what do you and I want to do when we're facing difficult things, number one, or number two, when our world seems to be crumbling? How do we want to react to that? How do we want to choose to respond to that? And I think with these three thought units that I just pointed out, we can trust God. God's going to be in his city. That city is secure. And in the end, he's got victory. I think we can say that, okay, no matter what I'm facing, no matter what I'm doing, or what's coming against me right now, the Lord is somebody I can trust, even though I don't understand, even though I can't see my way. I can trust him, and he is going to somehow bring victory. He works everything together, right, for good for those that trust the Lord. So this is really an affirmation of our faith. Even though it's a psalm, even though it's Old Testament, even though maybe it's prophetic in dimension, it's something that we can take an application from for ourselves, and that is trusting the Lord with all our hearts, no matter what. And the last thing I want to point out is all of the references. I only pointed out a few of them. Joel, Zechariah, Revelation, the Gospels, the Olivet Discourse, Luke 21. Again, as we get familiar with these texts, we now have a grid, let's say, a biblical grid that is well-informed biblically. So when we take that grid and we start to look at other parts of Scripture, we'll have a much greater understanding of what those Scriptures are saying because we have more knowledge. So that's why reading the one-year Bible, that's why staying consistent and developing daily habits is so vital, because we're increasing our understanding as we go. Well, I hope that helps. I hope this was informative. I just want to say God bless you, and I pray that God will open your eyes to the Scriptures, the beauty of the Scriptures, and the wonders that are in this for you and I. God bless. Thank you.